A low hum cuts through the dark, sonar echoes rippling across a black expanse. A deep-sea camera drifts forward, its light slicing through 1,500 meters of silence. Out of the shadows, a hull emerges, upright, unbroken, its nameplate shimmering under centuries of salt and pressure. Valbanera, a ship that vanished 112 years ago. No distress signal, no debris, no survivors. And as the camera edges closer, something impossible becomes clear. Every hatch, every door has been sealed from the inside. In 1919, the Valbanera disappeared somewhere between the Canary Islands and Cuba. For more than a century, she was a ghost story folded into maritime history. A passenger liner lost to a hurricane, her resting place unknown. But the wreck found last month lies hundreds of miles from the last known storm track, facing the wrong direction, preserved in near-perfect condition. And that detail alone rewrites what we thought we knew about one of Spain's most haunting shipwrecks. The Valbanera was built in Glasgow in 1906 for the Naveira Pinillos line, carrying immigrants, traders, and families from Spain across the Atlantic. Her final journey began in the port of Santiago de Cuba on September 10, 1919, bound for Havana, her decks crowded with 488 passengers and crew. That same week, the Caribbean was ravaged by a storm later known as the Florida Keys hurricane. Winds exceeding 250 kilometers per hour, entire islands erased. The Valbanera was assumed to have been caught in it, another casualty of nature's indifference. But where she has now been found, the seas were calm that night. The discovery happened by accident. The research vessel Meridian Deep was surveying methane seep fields west of the Cayman Trench, work meant for oceanography, not archaeology. Late one evening, their multi-beam sonar mapped a solid return on the seafloor, a symmetrical structure, 122 meters long, 17 wide. Initially logged as a geological formation, its signature was too precise. On the third pass, the shape resolved. A bow. The sonar operator whispered to the deck, "That's a ship." Hours later, an ROV descended into the dark. For 40 minutes, its light swept over steel plating, corroded railings, and silted decks. Then the name appeared. Raised lettering along the bow, Valbanera. No one spoke. The footage shows the ship resting upright, perfectly balanced, her hull almost untouched by collapse. The grocery holds are intact, portholes sealed. Even her wheelhouse, skeletal under layers of rust, stands as if waiting for a crew to return. But the ROV's manipulators caught a detail that shouldn't exist. The doors along the main corridor were intact and locked tight, not fused, not collapsed, closed from the inside, bolted through. At this point in the footage, one of the researchers muttered, just audible on the audio feed, "She's still holding them in." They meant it as a joke. It didn't sound like one. When the team surfaced, they checked the wreck's coordinates. It lay 340 nautical miles from the Valbanera's presumed path, outside any hurricane record from that week, which raised a question no one could answer. If the storm didn't claim her, what did? Maritime historians began reviewing the Valbanera's records. Built of steel with twin triple expansion engines, she was considered modern, nearly unsinkable for her class. The ship carried enough coal for transatlantic range, with watertight bulkheads that could isolate flooding. She also had a Marconi wireless telegraph, the same system that saved hundreds aboard the Carpathia and Titanic. But between September 9th and the morning she vanished, no messages were sent. Coastal listening stations in Havana and Key West confirmed. There was silence from Valbanera for over 24 hours before she disappeared. So what happens aboard a passenger that suddenly goes dark? One explanation: a catastrophic mechanical failure that flooded her generators. But if that were true, the ship wouldn't have drifted this far off course. She was traveling northeast. The wreck is due southwest. She turned deliberately, away from safety, into open sea. Then came a detail from the imagery that changed the tone of the investigation. In the ROV's high-resolution scans, corrosion sealed over several of the ship's main vents, as if they'd been manually closed off. That could only have been done by crew, and only from within. Why would the crew seal a ship during a storm? Engineers explained it later. You don't. A sealed hull traps air, increases internal pressure, and hastens collapse once water finds a breach. You'd open vents, not close them. unless the danger wasn't outside the ship, but inside. The primary report, the one now circulating privately among maritime archaeologists, lists 3 working theories. The first is the conventional. Valbanera entered the hurricane's outer bands, suffered engine failure, and sank too fast to issue distress. The locked doors were standard storm protocol. Watertight compartments closed in sequence as the crew tried to save her. The near-perfect condition of the wreck is coincidence, deep-sea stillness preserving what the surface destroyed. The second theory is uncomfortable, and medical historians find it plausible. Valbanera's 1919 route coincided with the height of the Spanish flu pandemic. Ships were quarantined mid-ocean when fever broke out on board. Quarantine meant sealing decks, isolating compartments, minimizing contact, sometimes fatally. If an epidemic spread through the ship, lockdown procedures could have turned Valbanera into a floating tomb. The silence of the radio might not have been failure, but fear. Fear of being diverted, impounded, or refused landing. Under that theory, the crew sealed themselves in to contain contagion and never unsealed the doors. The third theory refuses to die. In the months before Prohibition, Caribbean waters seethed with smuggling operations tied to Havana syndicates and Spanish shipping firms. The Valbanera's manifests from her final voyage list commercial goods, textiles, and machine parts. Conveniently vague. There are also missing pages in the Santiago Harbor log, entries removed sometime after 1920. The theory goes that Valbanera carried contraband, possibly arms, possibly antiquities, and that her course change was deliberate, a rendezvous gone wrong, that she was intercepted, boarded, and sunk intentionally. The sealed doors then become something far darker, containment not of water, but of evidence. For now, these theories contend quietly among academics, but the real conflict lies elsewhere. The Meridian Deep Consortium, private, mostly European grants, announced plans to revisit the wreck with a manned submersible. That mission was abruptly postponed after Spanish maritime authorities reasserted sovereign claim. Funding partners withdrew. One internal memo leaked: visibility concerns, memorial site, potential cultural sensitivity. Cuban officials, asked for comment, said nothing. The footage remains publicly unverified. What's been released is fragmentary. Frames copied from archived backups, some obscured by the shimmer of disturbed sediment. One sequence, frozen and enhanced by independent analysts, appears to show a faint human outline visible through a window in the main saloon. Skeptics call it an illusion, layers of silt that mimic human form. Others are less certain. The official line is that until a full archaeological protocol is approved, no object from the site may be touched or raised. Informally, that means leave it alone. There's also the matter of the sealed radio room. One ROV pass caught part of the operator's console. It's intact, its transcription key resting midway between dots and dashes, as if someone stopped mid-message. Dust has settled over the brass plate where the call sign once was. If any transmission was ever attempted, it's lost now, trapped behind steel, pressure, and the weight of a century. In the modern age, we like to think the ocean has been mapped, its mysteries cataloged, but every rediscovered wreck reminds us how much is still missing. The Valbanera was not a myth. She was a modern ship with a modern crew, erased without trace until technology advanced far enough to find her again. And now that we've found her, we face the oldest question in maritime history: what should be left untouched? Some say the ocean keeps its secrets because we don't deserve the answers. Others say that beneath enough pressure and time, truth simply compresses until it's unrecognizable. Somewhere inside that steel hull, in pitch-black silence, 488 stories remain sealed. The deeper question is not what happened on the Valbanera, but why someone wanted it never to be known. And if the ocean's memory outlasts ours, what other forgotten ships are waiting, locked from within, holding something the surface isn't ready to face?